Well, hi, welcome back from 2 week break. We're going to basically try to get to about two thirds of chapter 4. So let's go ahead and get started. Chapter 4 basically gets into loops and different types of files, and mainly the thing with chapter 4 is being able to execute the same line of code over and over and over again. Probably the meat and potatoes of Java is, or I should say any programming language, is going to be your if then else statement, being able to make different selections. So, being able to basically distinguish, is this true, is that true, is this greater than that type of thing. That's probably the meat and the potatoes. Now, the next probably big hitter in the programming world is being able to loop, and that is basically doing the same lines of code per se until some type of equation basically becomes true. So the very first thing I want to talk about is incrementation. And if we look at the screen over here we've got the increment decrement program, Java program. And you'll see that it again it's a static void main, so it's an executable Java program by itself. We've declared a variable called number. It's an integer data type set to the number 4. I've got the number is, display the number, and I will increment the number. Now, if we look over on page 193, we're going to see that we have a whole bunch of different types of ways to increment depending on what you need to happen. So let me just kind of show you some of the different ways we can do it. So very first way we're going to discuss is, well, in the programming world we would do something like this. X equals X plus 1. Now that's a valid Java statement right there, and what that's doing is that's saying take X, add 1 to X, and now X used to have 3, now it has the number 4. Okay, that's kind of a long way to do it. Again, still valid, very capable of doing it. We can also do this. I can say X plus equal 1, and what that is saying is the same exact thing. Make X equal to itself, and let's go ahead and add 1 to it. Now if I took the 1 and changed it to a 2, if I change this to the number 2, that's going to add 2 to the variable X. Okay, and remember, X is a variable, so whatever the variable names, that's what has to be in that spot. Now if I said X minus equal 1, that's going to do just what you think. It's going to subtract 1 from that variable. So if X had 3, X now has 2. Okay, just has 2. So I could say X multiplication equals 3, and that says take X, multiply it times 3, and replace X with that product of that. I could do division as well. Okay, so those are the more, I should say, the medium ways to do things. The next best way to increment would just be X plus plus, and that says go ahead and add 1 to X. I could do X minus minus, and it's going to do the same exact thing. It's going to subtract 1 from X and go from there. So if we go back to the code, here I have the number, which is the number 4 integer, and I say plus plus, and then I go ahead and print it out, and then I say we'll decrement the number, and then okay, so if we go ahead and run this, you can kind of see my product, the run of it, right? So the first time through it's a 4. I say we'll increment the number, it is now 5. I will decrement the number, it is now 4. So not too bad, it's pretty simplistic. Not going to dive a whole lot into that, so not too bad. Now if we take a look at the next program, which is the prefix, there we have, again, we're setting it to a number 4, and I'm saying the number is whatever's there. I will increment the number, and this time I say plus plus number. Now in this case we're using the prefix. We're using plus plus and then the number. So in this case, number is the variable. I'm saying plus plus in front of it. Same thing, decrement minus minus. We will get the same exact results. Okay, so the whole point of the whole point of that particular exercise is to let you know you can put the plus plus in front, the minus minus in front, or behind, whatever the case may be. So let me run that real quick just so we can see, and voila, we get the same exact results. So not too bad. So the reason we're covering the increments and decrements first is because that's how we're going to utilize our looping. Now, looping is it's very powerful, but it's also very dangerous. And what I mean by that is when you get into a loop, you have to have a way to get out of the loop. Okay? And what I mean by that is if I get into a loop and there is no end, that's what we call an endless loop. And endless loops are a huge no-no in the programming world. So what we need to do is always make sure that we get out of a loop. And the way we do the looping is we use increments. So as I go, so let's say for example, a program we're going to read student names of a particular class. So I read a name, I increase the counter. Read the name, increase the counter. Read the name, increase the counter. And so now when I get through reading all of those different things, I now have a counter. I know now how many times I need to go through a particular loop. Okay, so we always need what's called a Boolean switch to basically start and stop a loop. So what I mean by that is I'm going to say it's like saying if this particular variable is true, then go ahead and do this many times. Okay, so kind of think of it in that terms. It's not going to so much be that, but let's just go ahead and bring up the code. So here we have what's called a while loop. So if we take a look at the code, again, it's a static void main. I've got an integer, I set it to the number 1, and I say while number, this variable up here, is less than or equal to 5. Now it's very important we understand less than or equal to, because if I just had less than 5, that means inside of that loop it will never be a 5. And I'll explain that here in a second. But in this particular case, I wanted to start at 1 because I start at 1, and then I want to end when it's 5. So in this case I say while the number is less than or equal to 5. So I'm saying, so think of a while saying while this statement is true. While it's true, do this. And it's going to go ahead and say hello, and then it's going to increment the number. Now, it's going to print a number? No. You notice we're not printing the number, we're just printing the number, the word hello. So basically I'm expecting this. I'm expecting the phrase hello to be printed 5 times on the screen. And then it's going to come up and then say that's all. So let's go ahead and run it, and we'll talk about what's going to happen here in a sec. So when we run it, again, hello is in there 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it says that's all. Now the thing I want you to pay very close attention to is what's happening inside of that loop and what's happening outside of that loop. Okay, so if I were to do this, if I were to say sys out, and I'm going to type number, okay, you know what, let me do this instead. Let me put the number in front of our sys out. Now the reason I'm doing that is I want this to be the very last thing that's executed inside of that loop. And then I'm going to copy that and put it just outside the loop. Now the reason I'm doing this is I want you to pay close attention when I run this. You know it says hello 5, hello. So if I scroll the way up, you'll see that the 1, we set it to 1, but I increment it and then I say sys out. So it says hello, 2, hello, 3, hello, 4, hello, 5. Now you'll notice that in this particular case, it prints 5 and it prints the word hello and then 6, 6. So basically here's what's going on there. Why does 6, 6 print twice? Well, first time through, this number is 1 and right here it gets set to 2, and so it prints the number 2. It's still inside the loop, so it comes back around, it increments the number to 3, so then it prints the number 3. Next time through, it increments it to 4, it prints the 4. Increments to 5, and it prints the 5. It increments to 6. Now, in this case right here, it's incremented to 6, we print the number 6. And then we come back up, and basically here's what's happening each time. Is it this, think of this as like an if statement. It says if that statement is true, continue on. So every time it gets through with the loop, it comes back up to this while statement, does an if check. Well, it was a 5, and that's perfectly legal. That statement's still true, so it comes in here and it prints hello. And then it basically increments it, which is now 6. It's now 6, and we print the number 6. We come back up and we check, is that statement still true? Now it's false, and it backs out. And when I print this, that's why the number 6 gets printed twice. Okay, so make sure that you understand that this incrementer will be one extra incrementation outside of that loop. Just kind of put it down on a piece of paper. It's called desk checking. Kind of write down the word number, start with a 1, and then kind of go through each and kind of do it yourself and increment it, and you'll see how it works. Okay, so that's a while loop. Can this particular while statement never execute? Yeah, it can. It can. And the way that it works, is if I set this to 6 right here, well, this statement right off the bat is not true, so it will never execute anything inside of that loop. So again, different situations cause different looping situations. Okay. Yeah, and there on page 200 it talks about infinite loops. What we talk about the endless loop. Now, I will say this: when you're doing incrementations, there's really, I should say, no such thing as endless loop, because we do have a max. Remember, shorts have 32,768. So in this particular case, that loop's only going to execute 32,768, and then it's going to throw an error. It will throw an error, and basically it will throw an error and then show you that it's basically outside of the incrementation. Okay, so that's it for this section. Next video we'll continue on, and we'll see you in a bit.